Greetings. I'm Stephen Watson, the President and CEO of the National World War II Museum, and it's my great pleasure to welcome all of you tuning in from across the country and across the world. Thank you for joining us for Memory Wars, World War II at 75 and beyond, broadcast live from the National World War II Museum's Hall of Democracy. I'm pleased to share that this is the first signature program presented by our newly named Jenny Craig Institute for the Study of War and Democracy. You'll hear more about Jenny Craig and the Institute from Executive Director Mike Bell in just a moment. But let me say that the National World War II Museum is proud to honor this innovator, business leader, and trailblazer for women worldwide. As you may know, we had hoped to host this wonderful weekend on site here in New Orleans. However, out of a desire to avoid any challenges that would cause us to postpone this important conference yet again, we made the difficult decision this winter to host this event virtually. We're delighted to be able to do this by patching in our 40 speakers from around the world into our campus media studios to broadcast out to you, our global audiences. Before we get started, and in keeping with our tradition here at the National World War II Museum, I'd like to give a special thank you to all World War II veterans, home front workers, and Holocaust survivors watching our program today. It is an honor to pay tribute to you and your service every day here at the museum. I'd also like to recognize all other veterans and active duty military joining us online. Thank you for carrying on our country's great legacy of service. And finally, I'd like to recognize those that have participated in our past conferences. It's wonderful to have you with us, and I'd like to give a special welcome to those of you who are new to us. I hope what you see inspires you to continue to engage with our online content and our in-person programs. Of course, none of this would have been possible without the continued support of our two presenting sponsors, who have stood by this program as we've had to adjust our plans multiple times over the past year and a half. The American Battle Monuments Commission has been a friend and partner of this institution for years, supporting our guests on battlefield tours during visits to cemeteries overseas, and partnering with us to create a new series of teacher professional development courses. Thank you to General John Brown, Rob D'Alessandro, and Ben Brands for your assistance with this conference and for your ongoing commitment to advancing our shared educational mission. EA, or Electronic Arts, and Respawn Entertainment, together with Oculus by Meta, have also been wonderful partners throughout this process. Thank you to Peter Hirschman, Vince Zampella, and Emily Adair, and the entire team at Respawn. This weekend's Memory Wars conference aims to address the shifting landscape of popular memories of World War II. We originally envisioned this conference as part of our commemoration activities for the 75th anniversary of the end of the war. Recognizing the role our museum plays in public and scholarly dialogue about the war and its continued legacy, we felt it would be appropriate to host something that equaled the importance of the event. Now, nearly 2 years later, the war feels more relevant than ever. Whether reading or watching news stories around the world, you can see the lasting impact of World War II, and our sessions will touch on many of these issues that are at the forefront today. The idea for this conference goes back years to my predecessor, Nick Mueller, our founding president and CEO. Nick frequently brought forward articles, examples of how the war was being remembered, taught, or used, and just as frequently, how it was being misremembered, mistaught, or misused. I want to thank Nick for his commitment to making this program a reality, as well as the conference planning committee that worked side by side with him, which includes Alexandra Ritchie, the chair of the committee, John Morrow, the convener of the museum's Presidential Counselors Advisory Group, Gunter Bischoff, Ty Sedgley, Beth Bailey, Jason Stenhauer, Omer Bartoff, Christine Sato Yamazaki, Jeremy Suri, Mark Pachter, and Patrick Gallagher. Our committee members not only provide us with counsel on building the best possible program, but as you will see, participate in our sessions and help us in outreach to make other panelists to make the program as strong as possible. Although today's program is virtual, the National World War II Museum is open, and I invite you all to come down to New Orleans and visit us in our wonderful city. Again, thank you for joining us today, and I hope you all enjoy all that Memory Wars has to offer. Now, I know we're all eager to get the program started, so I'd like to turn it over to our Chief Master of Ceremonies, Dr. Michael Bell, the Executive Director of the Jenny Craig Institute for the Study of War and Democracy. Mike?
Thank you, Stephen. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Mike Bell, and it's my distinct pleasure to serve as the primary Master of Ceremonies throughout our Memory Wars Conference. It's a great privilege to be here for this event and to be part of the museum's Jenny Craig Institute for the Study of War and Democracy. The Jenny Craig Institute is a community of scholars at the National World War II Museum, forming a national center for research, higher education, publications, and public programming dedicated to promoting the history of World War II, the relationship between the war and America's democratic system, and the war's continued relevance for the world. We are honored that Jenny Craig, her daughter Denise, and son-in-law Peter Malone have generously stepped forward to support the Institute. Their recent family gift will allow the Jenny Craig Institute to do more to advance our mission, and of course to conduct future events such as this one that we have planned for you over the next few days. Jenny Craig has deep connections with Louisiana. She grew up here in New Orleans during World War II, and her family has a record of service to the country. Her grandfather served in uniform in World War I, and her two brothers in the Second World War. She's an entrepreneur and a successful businesswoman, an innovator, and a trailblazer for women around the world. She has a passionate commitment to education and to service to our country. Here's a brief announcement that you may have seen on our social media earlier this month, featuring a few remarks from our sponsor.
I think education is important for education's sake, but I especially think it's important for our country, because if we don't learn from the past the atrocities and consequences of war, then it's bound to repeat itself.
As you can see, education, and specifically our subject this weekend, are important to Jenny Craig and to her family, a family that has a long and honorable service in our nation's armed forces and service to the country. Now, in addition to the Institute's public programs such as this, we're excited to be engaged in higher learning seminars and workshops for university students and emerging scholars, providing quality digital content, such as the articles you find on our website, and we're heavily involved in the process of working to complete our Liberation Pavilion, the capstone exhibit space on our campus, set to open next year. As Stephen mentioned, this conference has been long in the making, and there's one person who conceived of it, coordinated the sessions, and kept pushing it forward to ensure that you, our audience, will benefit from it. That visionary person is Dr. Nick Mueller, the National World War II Museum's founding president and CEO Emeritus. It's my pleasure now to introduce Dr. Mueller for his own conference opening remarks before chairing our very first session entitled, Did Hollywood Really Go to War? Nick, over to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Mike. And yes, indeed, this conference has been long in the making. It goes back to 2019, and in the end, it's technology that's bringing us all together virtually, and we're delighted at that opportunity. And perhaps this program will be so exciting that we're going to find a way at some point to get everybody here in New Orleans to appreciate the museum and to get to know one another. There couldn't be a subject more important, I believe, to the understanding of World War II than also understanding how World War II is remembered, its meaning, for today and for the future, and also how it's been remembered in the past, which is not always the same as it is today. So, and I want to also add my thanks to all of the speakers and sponsors who've stuck with us through thick and thin, COVID, hurricanes, 3 postponements, and we are just delighted to get this thing going. And I also want to welcome our audience. The audience has been steadfast in sticking with us and has grown exponentially with this virtual free offering. And I would say, as you know, the title of our conference, Memory Wars, World War II at 75. Well, it's just the tip of the iceberg of the contested memories and statements that are being made in recent years and days in books by world leaders, remarks in museums and by pundits alike. And so it's important that we come together with the world's experts on the subject of the memory of World War II. And that brings me to just pointing out the obvious, that this kind of a conference is different from our normal approach to the battles and generals and campaigns of the war. This is about what a nation or an individual remembers or chooses to remember, and what we choose to forget, or that we didn't know about the war, and so it doesn't inform our public opinion or our public memory, which is the subject of our conference. Public memory is not a static thing. It changes drastically, and it is more consistent in some countries than it is in others, but it is certainly a moving target. As our own great Southern writer, William Faulkner, said, the history isn't dead, it's not even past. So we'll find that out today. Now, we used to refer to this conference title just as a working title as Contested Memories, but in fact, some of our planning committee said they're more than contested, they're wars over the memory, not physical wars, but it was a stronger title. And it depends, of course, your memory depends as an individual or as a society on whether you were a victor or a loser in the war, whether you were a perpetrator or a bystander, or even a survivor. And so all of these different origins form the beginnings of your foundation and changing memories of the war. Now, here at the museum, I would say that we like to think of ourselves partly as coaches and partly as referees. The coaches are the historians under Mike Bell and our institute and our collections department and education departments. These are qualified, extraordinarily well-regarded and respected historians on World War II. But we also act as referees in programs like this, where we are trying to adjudicate the wars over memory, and I hope you'll see some of that going on in the great debates. But you, our audience, are in the bleachers or in the stands, as it were, and we hope that and welcome your stories and contributions to our discussions today. Now, let's just say it's very relevant in the sense that just yesterday, our President Zelensky said Ukraine was fighting for freedom around the world. Well, we're going to hear a lot about that from me and others because those of us on the Allied side thought that that's what we were indeed fighting about, freedom and democracy and human rights. One of our speakers in a previous program said that we need to develop good history, and that will lead to good memory. And we applaud that, honest memory that will help us understand our values, our beliefs, and our identities within our society and ourselves. So the very high stakes in the politics of memory wars, World War II, for individuals and societies, because it ultimately comes down to understanding what we fought for, why we fought. So public memory touches every part of our lives, our identity, and our freedom and human rights. So it's not an esoteric exercise. So let the memory wars begin, and I hope you all will enjoy the next few days, and many of you, I hope, will think about coming to our conference in the fall of 2022, our normal international conference on World War II.